going on, everybody? Welcome back. It's a brand new episode of Liam Picks Fights, and today we're talking about UFC Vegas 68, headlined by Derrick the Black Beast Lewis taking on Sergei Polar Bear Spivak, and we are breaking down this fight card with none other than Rich from Fight Night Bets. Very excited to bring him on the show. Guys, you might have seen us before on Twitter with our best bet and prop of the week. We had been running it for a long time, hit things like plus 600 on Kyler Phillips, plus 200 Kyle Dawkins ITD. Those are just off the top of my head. So hit a lot of plus money plays together already. Excited now to bring him on the show for the very first time. So Rich, how are you doing today, my man?
How's it going? Yeah, all good. Can't complain. Ready to break down some fights, man.
Love it. So without further ado, we'll get into the first one. This is a fight that a lot of people are high on. Tatsuro Taira taking on Jesus Aguilar. And this fight for me, man, was an obvious spot off the rip, just in terms of how I like to target betting. You know, Tatsuro Taira, I think one of the lessons people can take away is you can't always get the same price on somebody forever. So if you want to get money out of these prospects when they come in and they're being fed easy matchups by the UFC, you have to take full advantage. I bet 10 units on Tatsuro Taira's first two fights in the UFC. Now I would get 1 unit back if I did that. I've made 8 units betting on the guy. So the opportunity to bet him on the money line is probably past, but there's still ways to target the fight. I think that this is a winnable fight for him inside the distance. He has a lot of stylistic advantages. He has a huge reach advantage. He's going to be more muscular, in my opinion. He's 3 years younger. He looks like he has a good chin. He looks like he has much better grappling fundamentals, and he's more dynamic in the grappling. He pops out on people's back from interesting positions. When he's fallen out of position in the UFC, he's recovered guard very quickly and then gone from guard right to the back in ways that I can't even understand. I grapple every day. It's very athletic maneuvers, very flashy technical grappling. So I think Tatsuro Taira projects much higher as a prospect. I think Aguilar's a tough guy. I think he's gritty. I think he's going to come forward and try and bring the fight, but I think he's going to be positionally outmatched in this fight. And I think that Tatsuro Taira holds most of the advantages here. Rich, how do you feel?
Yeah, that was quite in depth, man. You pretty much covered everything. I think it's interesting what you say. There's a right way to approach the fight. Obviously, the money line isn't playable. I can't even imagine the squarest of square people parlaying, minus 1,200. Yeah, I did like Tiara prop. I liked the KO. I see someone's put that in the comments, but that seems a bit square too. Now you look at Twitter, everybody and their mom seems to be on it. But yeah, the sub, that's mushed. What is it? Minus 160 for a fucking, a prop. That's crazy. You can't really play it. So yeah, props to those who got in early on the ITD line. I think it opened minus 140, something like that. But yeah, in terms of the matchup, this Jesus Aguilar, he's tiny reach. He's probably going to get finished in the first round. Probably going to be sub, but you got to find the value, play the numbers, and the KO seems nice.
Yeah, and for me, I got plus 850 on the KO. I'll just tell you guys, this was a play that I already gave out in the Lab VIP. It's been on my Bet MMA, but I added to it at plus 850 because you're seeing sharp markets react to the money. They're not ignoring the money coming in on Tyra by knockout. They're responding heavily. And Tyra is a guy that is always going to be a dynamic submission threat. In this fight, the best path to victory for his opponent is grappling. That's what the guy does to find his finishes. So I feel like Tyra would be wise to just keep this fight at distance. He's very fast, agile on the feet. And when he lands with authority. He's already recorded 1 knockdown in the UFC. And we saw in regional tape, if you guys go back and watch that, he was knocking down most of the guys that he submitted. He knocked them down with the hands, and then he'd follow up with great killer instinct on the ground. But we also saw he nearly finished Carlos Candelario. I thought that fight was eligible for stoppage when he was just elbowing him relentlessly from the back. I don't think there's anything stopping him from doing that to, again, a tough guy in Aguilar. I don't think he's just going to quit. I think he's going to get overwhelmed by a much bigger, stronger guy. So we both like Tatsuro Taira here to get it done. And
and you know what? I think this UFC have put a lot of stock into this guy. I think they see the potential in him, and I think they're doing that with the matchups they're giving him. And, you see it sometimes when they get an easy opponent. No, Tiara knows he's going to smash this fight. He's obviously watched a bit of tape himself. He knows what Aguilar's all about. So he might come out and test his stand-up. He knows that there's going to be no threat coming from the other way. So why not, take your time in there, get used to the octagon a little bit and, just play with your food, man. Fucking tease this guy, then knock him out in round 2 and cash out bets.
I would love nothing more than that. And I think that, the thing that's a little greasy here is the under 1.5, because we just saw Tyra in his last fight. He went out there, he got the second round finish. He's not in a rush. Even against Candelario, where was the round he was most dominant? He was most effective. Round 3, the guy's got good cardio as well. So I feel like we're going to see improvements from Tyra fight over fight. We could see, like you mentioned, a little bit more time spent on the feet. So that could be the trap here where they think, oh, you know what? I'm going to just hammer the under 1.5. And then Tyra finishes him at the 8-minute mark. And you're sitting there like, I can't believe it. So don't get cute if you have a price that's minus 120, minus 115 on the under 1.5, and then Tyra ITD at minus 165, minus 175. It just makes more sense from an EV perspective to get involved that way. But we can move along to the next fight here at middleweight. Another interesting fight here is the Iron Turtle, Jun Yong Park, comes back to fight Dennis Tilulian. And Dennis has looked pretty impressive in the UFC. I actually wasn't expecting very much from him when he came in. I thought that he performed better than I thought he would in the Kizriev fight. He kept getting back up to his feet, but that was just a matchup in hell for him. It's like the worst kind of matchup you can imagine. But I think that Jamie Pickett is like a free win for most, high level capable UFC fighters. So that doesn't really impress me too much. I think that Jun Yong Park would be wise to grapple in this fight. He does have a grappling background. I believe he's a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He's looked good when he takes fights to the ground. He's not the most lethal guy, doesn't have the greatest subs, but he'll pass. He'll throw a lot of ground and pound. So he'll do the things you need to do to win in the eyes of the judges. He opened up some cuts on John Phillips. Again, that fight probably could have been eligible for stoppage depending on who the referee is. But who's more dangerous on the feet here? It's Tilulian, of course. Like, he just throws better, cleaner shots. We've seen Jun Yong Park hurt people like Gregory Rodriguez on the feet in the UFC, but he doesn't have the greatest killer instinct. He doesn't know how to finish guys at the highest clip. So for me, those are the problems on the Jun Yong Park side. He's a favorite here. 65+% indication. It's really hard for me to get involved with him at that price. I bet him against Eric Anders for a large amount of money because I was like, Eric Anders can be out grappled. This is the kind of guy that he's going to easily outwork him. Eric Anders almost beat him. Eric Anders probably should have beat him. So I was like, yeah, out on betting him as a favorite forever. How about you, Rich? What do you think?
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I bet Anders in that fight. I respected Anders' takedown defense, and obviously I got burnt. But yeah, what's notable in this fight, in my opinion, is Tilulian. I'll just call him Dennis. Yeah, in that first fight, he came in on short notice. He showed some good takedown defense, but obviously it was just a mismatch in the wrestling department. And I think the short notice in that fight played a huge part. What I like about Park is his IQ. Whoever he fights, he takes the path of least resistance. You fight John Phillips, you don't stand and have a boxing match with him. You take the fucker down. So I like that about him. I like his high IQ. I definitely think he's going to push for the takedowns in this fight. But what I've seen from Dennis is he's a live dog in this situation because he does have good takedown defense. I think he just had a bad matchup in his UFC debut on short notice, and I think we're going to see better things for him. So yeah, it's a dog or pass situation. You don't play minus 200 on a Park in this situation, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think that Dennis is probably, the smartest way to play him is on the money line here. The KO, I think, is only like twice the amount. It's like plus 360 or something like that. And there's really not that much, juice on that. I don't think that that's worth getting cute because he could just win a decision here. If it ends up being a striking affair, close, it's on the feet. What would stop him from winning that fight? And then you're just throwing out some EV. It's not above like 4 or 5 to 1. I would probably just lay off the props here and look at Tilulian on the money line if you want to get involved. Otherwise, pass on the fight. I'm also just going to look real quick at the prop market and see what Jun Yong Park to win by sub is. It's a disgusting number. So yeah, just pass on this fight or play the underdog.
It's funny what you say as well. Like in the first fight when you said don't play the under 1.5.
Yep.
It's the same with this one. Don't get cute, man. Because if you can miss out by a few seconds. I've been there before. I bet unders and I've literally missed by seconds, and it eats you up, man. So like you say, don't get cute, man.
Absolutely. Fight not to go the distance is your friend. If you're looking at unders, fight not to go the distance. Don't get cute in that regard either. But next up, we have a fight that I have very little to say about this fight. If you guys have been watching for a long time, probably the squarest bet I've ever made. 5 units, Mandy Bohm, right down the drain in her last fight. And I was like, okay, I will pass on every Mandy Bohm fight that ever happens from now till the end of time. As with Ji Yeon Kim, I bet on her in her last fight. I thought that she clearly won the fight. Aesthetics are everything in women's MMA. We've seen this a number of times. Jessica I thought clinically outboxed Jennifer Maia when they fought, and she had a cut on her face from the first round from a clash of heads. She lost the fight on the cards. It's like, if one of them's bleeding and the other one's not, just throw out your ticket. It's over. So I think that was ultimately what cost her that fight. Priscilla Cachoeira came forward violently in the third round, hit like a big elbow on her face. She's busted open, looks gross, cost her the fight. I don't think that that's going to happen here. But I've also thought when I've watched Mandy Bohm in the past that she's almost like, play fighting. Like she thinks she's better than she is. I feel like if she just bit down and like threw, she could be a better fighter. But for me, just nothing worth investing on in this fight. I'm going to pass. What do you think, Rich?
Yeah, that's the key thing, bro. She's not a fighter, Mandy Bohm. She's not a fighter at all. And some notable things when I was doing my notes. I think she's a mental midget. That was the first thing I noticed. I put her in the same category as Alex Hernandez, Terrence McKinney. These fighters who, if you give them some adversity, they check out in the middle of the fight. You can see it in their eyes. They're disinterested and they're there for the taking. And we see that with the likes of Alex Hernandez after round one. They just fall off a cliff, man. And Mandy's done that in her last fights. The only difference is her opponents didn't take advantage of that. And I think Kim's going to KO her, man. I think after round one, Mandy's going to come out all hot, fucking thinking she's the shit, doing her thing. She's going to clinch a lot. And then round two, I really can see the volume and the boxing of Kim light this girl up. They weren't sending Mandy Bohm to bloody Korea or wherever it was to get her first W. I like Kim, man, and I don't mind it by KO.
I can't push back on it. Fire Fist is her nickname. That's what I was double checking there. So it would be nice if she was able to put him to use. One UFC win by knockout against arguably the worst fighter in the women's division's history. So Nadia Kassem really underprepared for that fight. Came out, no glove touch, and got dropped on the first exchange. So I think that, for Ji Yeon Kim, it would be a big win. She's kind of gotten screwed over her last couple fights. This might just be the UFC saying like, hey, here's a free one to get back on track. You kind of got jobbed out by the judges. So we've seen that on a number of occasions. I think for Mandy Bohm, this is, win or go home. So probably going to see her best effort to date, but what will that mean? Probably very little. So yeah, I'm not investing in the Mandy Bohm side. I wish you guys luck on Ji Yeon Kim, but she seems like one of the least lucky fighters that we have in the UFC. So that's why I could just do with a pass here. As for the next fight, guys, next up on the card is going to be the tournament fights. So I've just watched most of these guys for the first time today. I did not watch the Road to UFC when it was airing live. So I still am getting a better opinion on some of these guys that I'll have by fight time. So always check out my article for Roto Grinders if you can. Ask me if you want follow-ups on these. But in any case, I saw the fight between Rinya Nakamura. I saw the Toshi Kazama fights. I saw the Yisha fights. I saw the Jiang Yang Li fights. I saw the Anshul fights. I saw the Jekka fights. I didn't see either of these two gentlemen. So, Rich, if you have an opinion on the first two gentlemen at the flyweight class, Hyun Sung Park and Seung Guk Choi, I would be interested in your opinion, but I do not have one on this fight just yet.
Yeah, I haven't really looked into the 4 Road to UFC fights, the next 4 that we're going to talk about. This one, though, in particular, was the worst of the 4. I don't hate a shot on Park in the distance. I think he was plus 240. I think he's got the more finishing upside out of the 2. He finished both his fights on the show. And Choi seems to be a bit of a decision machine, likes his takedowns, likes to slow the fight down. But yeah, just pass. But if you're a degenerate and you want some action, play Park in the distance.
I like it. Some people out there like to have a bet on every fight, even if they're just throwing fivers on it. So, however you guys want to play it, best of luck to you. But yeah, this is a fight that I'm probably going to end up passing on. But I will have a more crystallized opinion by fight time. So check back in with me for that one. But the next fight, this is an interesting one. I actually kind of liked watching the tape for these two guys. Nakamura is way too easy to hit, right? And so if he was fighting high-level UFC guys, I would be very nervous for him. but this is a grappling fight. Like this is two guys that would prefer to go out there and grapple. I think that Nakamura is willing to go out there and swing heavies and throw hands, but he's a wrestler by trade. And you could see that in how he approaches the fight. He normally is pushing forward into people, winging heavies, and then grabbing a hold of them, ripping them to the ground. Kazama, I watched some of his gi matches as well. He looks like he's a pretty clever jiu-jitsu guy. Like he'll pull himself into a flying armbar, switch to the leg. Like he's very technical with his jiu-jitsu. He also makes a lot of mistakes, and he's not the most physical guy in the jiu-jitsu realm. So I think a wrestler is probably going to have, a little bit of their way with him. The problem that I have is, does Nakamura get submitted? That's kind of like my approach to this fight. It's like, if Nakamura doesn't get submitted, I don't think this guy is the guy to knock him out. I think somebody will because he just leaves his chin right out in the air to be hit. Doesn't have much semblance of defense, but I think he's the heavier hitter of these two guys. I think he's a little bit more willing to throw power shots as well. And I think on the ground, he's probably going to outmuscle him and be able to avoid some of those positions. I did not think his opposition on the road to UFC was that good. And they were able to defend a lot of the submissions. And he does weird stuff too, like the chicken wing. I saw he did a number of times on the regional scene. If that works in the UFC, I will actually have to just put some respect on his name because I've never seen that happen in the room or anything. So it's kind of a unique hold, but that's what makes me curious about this as a grappler. I don't think that there's much betting opportunity here. What do you think?
Yeah, I think Kazama has no chance. I don't think he's going to get it to the ground. And not even because Nakamura is a good wrestler. I've seen Kazama fight low-level comp and struggle to get it to the ground. So he ain't doing that in this fight. I think Nakamura does have some IQ about him. He's going to keep it standing and use his wrestling defensively, and he's going to try and knock him out on the feet. And I think he's got all of 3 rounds to try because he's not going to get anything coming back at him. From what I see, Kazama is purely a jiu-jitsu guy. He has 0 stand-up. I think even me or you in a pure boxing match would have a chance against him. So yeah, Nakamura for me. I don't like the money line. Obviously, it's chalky as fuck. Maybe take the KO prop, but I think even that's a bit chalky. So just pass, man. But yeah, Nakamura should have his way with him and KO him.
Yeah, I feel the same way. And the only thing I would consider playing is Nakamura by submission. It actually opened as low as plus 330 on DraftKings. It's as high as plus 800 on BetOnline. So that was what's a little bit interesting to me. I think that Kazama is going to put himself in some awkward wrestling exchanges. And like that just leaves you open to being guillotined. And this is not, nice guy jiu-jitsu tournaments where everybody's, grabbing a hold of your lapel and stuff like that. It's like, if he gets a hold of your head, he's going to try and break your neck and just rip your head off. So I think that Nakamura, he's really strong, physical, and I don't love the takedown setups that I've seen on the other side because he's often, looking for like a seatbelt around the side and then pulling somebody back. He ends up in a lot of hip-to-hip exchanges, and that's what was putting him underneath in the mount, putting him underneath in terrible positions. I think Nakamura is live for a ground and pound finish as well, just by getting on top of this guy in the full mount and just throwing 3 or 4 punches, knocking him out. So for me,
I'm not even sure how good this jiu-jitsu guy is in the jiu-jitsu realm. Yeah, he might be good with the gi, but from what I've seen, it doesn't translate to MMA. I've seen him get people down and get on top, and he isn't going for shit. He's kind of just laying there. So I'm not even sure how good his jiu-jitsu is, man.
Yeah, it's very process oriented. He likes to move slowly up the body and work from the half guard. And I think a lot of that works in technical jiu-jitsu matches where you have 10 minutes to work. But when you have 5 minutes to find a hold or not, I also think he kind of gassed out in those fights on the road to UFC, which is a little bit concerning because Nakamura is going to be way more physical than him. That gasses you out trying to move around somebody like that. So I think that he's going to be the more gassed from the wrestling exchanges. And that's what I like about Nakamura here. Next up at 145 pounds, Yisha taking on Jun Yong Lee. Jun Yong Lee, that's a guy who you want to watch tape on. It's real quick and to the point. He knocks people out pretty fast. On the other side, I wasn't altogether that impressed. It seemed like his opponent was pretty low level. He was able to easily take his back in the first, few grappling exchanges and then submit him. But that really didn't blow me away. I don't think that either one of these fighters should be a massive favorite. But I think the guy with more, round one finishing, winning upside is Ji Young Lee. So I understand why he's favored pre-flop, but is it a little bit significant at 70% when the guy's basically relying on the KO? It might be. What do you think about this one, Rich?
Yeah, I think out of all the Asian fighters on the road to UFC or whatever it's called, I think Lee is the best prospect. I really like this guy. Big for the weight class. Looks like he's on steroids. He's pretty huge in there. Like you say, he's patient in his striking. He finishes fights. And on the other side, how do you pronounce this guy's name? Z?
I think it's yeah, I think it's Yisha.
Yisha, yeah, I don't like him, man. He reminds me of like a Grant Dawson, Joe Selecki. He just wants to get the takedown. His striking is limited. Everything he does on the feet, striking wise, is just to set up a takedown. So yeah, look for that in this fight. All he's going to do is try and take the back of Lee and take him down, and I don't think he's going to have any success. The only positives I will say about him is he has a nice triangle off his back. So if Lee wants to play in his guard, he has to be wary of that. You know, he throws it up quite fast, like a match now, type of triangle. So yeah, be wary of that. But Lee should roll in this fight, and I hope he does. I'd like to see him get a knockout and, prosper in the UFC because I think he's got a high ceiling.
Yeah, for whatever reason, best fight odds, very limited prop listing for this fight. So I'll have to do a little bit more digging, but probably a fight not to go the distance here is what I'd be looking at if it's anything playable, just because on the one hand, you got a big knockout artist. And if he starts to gas out or make mistakes, the other guy is just going to be relentlessly trying to take his back and submit him. It's like those are the kind of stylistic matchups where a finish can take place in round 1 all the way till the end in round 3. So kind of like that for a fight not to go the distance.
But also what's worth mentioning is this guy pushes for the takedowns and he wants the submission, but that doesn't mean he can't be subbed himself. You know, I don't think his credentials are that great. So I wouldn't even rule out Lee getting the submission on him.
That's the same thing I was thinking with Nakamura. If the other guy wants to grapple the whole time, I could just set up a reaction. So we saw it with Said Nurmagomedov. Did he want to grapple? No. Did he know that the other guy's going to grapple all night? So I need to find one choke. And then he kept looking for it, found it, fight's over. I love that. Next up, last Road to UFC fight, and we've got Anshul Jubli taking on Jekka Saragih. And I got to say, I did not know what to expect when I was watching these guys, and I thought that Jubli looked all right in the first round of his fight. I thought he was slowing down really significantly. I thought that was concerning. I thought it was evident in round 2. I thought it was persistent into round 3. Jekka, on the other hand, he looks dangerous. He makes some weird choices. Like he just backs up at the beginning of his fights. I don't really understand that from a stylistic standpoint, but he wants guys to walk onto him so he could try and throw his strikes. And then he likes to catch kicks. He likes to throw big open side kicks. So he goes to the head and the body. And he's really fast. He throws in combination. So I think that's going to cause a lot of problems here. I think that, both these guys mix up their targets. I did see some leg kicking from Jubli, but I think that Jekka is probably the more dynamic striker to all parts of the body. For Jubli, his takedown defense also looks incredibly suspect to me. He was able to bounce back up to his feet a few times in those fights, but that was because the other guy did not know how to wrestle really well. He just would take him down and get flopped over. Like most good guys are not going to do that. They're just going to drop their hips to the ground and then you're stuck in side control. So I feel like he made a lot of really bad choices that better fighters will expose. And I just think that this Jekka guy looks way more dangerous to me. So I like Jekka here. And I haven't even looked at the odds for this fight. It's about to pick him. Yeah, I like Jekka. I think he's going to knock him out. What do you think?
I think it's funny, man. Everybody on Twitter, from what I'm seeing, seems to be on Jubli. He seems to be the mush of the week, in my opinion. You seen Donnie Brasco? He's in that scene where he says it's a fugazi. Yeah, that's what Jubli is. He's a fugazi, man. He's a fake. He's been doing MMA for like a couple of years. Go watch his interviews. He's cocky as hell. I think he's going to get knocked out here. I've bet it. I'm on the Saragih side. I think Jubli is limited. I think he likes to pump out the jab, but he doesn't follow it up with anything. I think this is just a game to him, man. This MMA thing. Tell people you train MMA. So yeah, I think he's getting knocked out. And I think octagon jitters are going to play a part. I've seen some of his regional fights, and I've seen him have to have pep talks on the stool, to try and like get him going. So I think
Road to UFC as well. Same thing, where they had to pep talk him through the second round.
That might have been the one I'm referring to. Yeah, he's good when he's the hammer on the regional scene against 0-2, guys. But when he faces some adversity, I think he's going to crumble here, and I like the KO.
Yeah, and I think that there's some volatility to all these fights, but, kind of playing into the volatility, you can get a plus 265 on him to win the fight by knockout. I don't think that that's a bad stab. And my man 2 Cents in the chat is saying that he's been submitted by 2 jobbers. Can't really push back on that. Don't think either one of these guys is going to proactively push the grappling. But if he does push the grappling, he's looking at a plus 850 to win the fight by sub. So you can put out a small amount here, not take a big risk, and then try and win big on the fight if that's what you want to do. Shout out to Moyes, rep in Indonesia. Best of luck, my brother. But yeah, don't have a strong opinion there. Just think that Jekka looked, a little bit more lethal in the striking. That would be my description. I thought he was doing a better job stepping through the right hand. And I think that the way that he mixes up the kicks, it makes it really hard for guys to set their feet. I thought his opponent, he looked like a guy who wanted to engage, who wasn't afraid of the striking, but he was getting damaged really badly. And you could see the swelling instantly from that body kick, changed his whole reaction to the fight, opened up all the shots upstairs. So I think that's what Jekka's got to be careful of. I did see him take a couple clean body strikes, and he was the one who was more active to the body in all the fights I watched. I think that this is going to be a fight where both guys mix up their targets a lot. So either guy could go down in any exchange. It's going to be a pretty volatile fight, but I like Jekka to get it done.
Yeah.
Do you have any last thoughts here?
Yeah, I'll clap back a little bit to just my 2 cents in the chat. Yeah, he got subbed twice, and they weren't the best level of guys, but you're just Tapology betting them, and you have to actually look into the matchups. And if you look into this matchup, Jubli ain't going to do shit. He definitely ain't knocking anybody out, I'll tell you that. If Jubli wins this fight, it'll be by a decision because he implemented the grappling more, but he isn't going to get a submission at all. This is Jenka by KO. And if he happens to lose it, it's because he wasn't defensively sound with the takedown defense, and Jubli manages to weasel himself a decision. But if you ask me, at this line, you want to take Jenka. And also, Jenka has far better striking. He's a counter striker primarily. And I hope he does it in this fight, because Jubli offers nothing on the feet. He pumps out a jab. He gets in range, and he doesn't throw anything with it. So, yeah, I'm planting my flag on the Jenka side here, man.
I like where your head's at, man. I saw the same things. I think he just looks like a more dangerous fighter. But back to the UFC guys. We're off Road to UFC and on to Yusaka Kinoshita taking on Adam Fugitt. And this is a fight where I liked Kinoshita on the Contender Series as well. This is another guy who's extremely dangerous, right? When your only loss is because you stomp somebody in the head, I gotta get on board with you. I think he's a violent guy. I think he's a dangerous fellow. And I thought that you made some sharp points. Guys, if you've never checked out Club and Sub before, another good show on YouTube. My man Rich was on there yesterday. I thought he made a brilliant point about this fight, which is Kinoshita, if you look at his recent fights, he's been winning a lot by knockout. The bookmakers are aware of this. You can get a good price on the ITD. It's very similar to the knockout price, and play that if you want to get more coverage. But then the submission prop is a very nice plus number. And that's the kind of opening that you want to take because people aren't hip to it yet. If he submits him in this fight, it's going to be under 5-1 moving forward and the opportunity will be lost. So just talking about a little bit of betting process and how these kind of plays come to be. It's plus 850, right? It's plus 900. Doesn't mean every one of these is going to hit every time. But if you constantly play the square numbers, you're going to lose. And if you constantly play the sharper numbers, you can give yourself a better chance to win. So that's just a quick point to make here. As I kick it over to you, what are your thoughts on this fight?
Yeah, let me ask you, out of Kinoshita's wins, does he have more sub wins or does he have more KO wins?
Well, that depends. Are you talking professional or are you talking amateur?
It's all the same to me.
Well, in his professional bouts, more by knockout, which is why the lines are the way that they are. But you are correct that almost all of his wins on the amateur scene are via submission. So the guy's very capable.
And it just goes back to what you're saying, reading into things. The line might be wide and there's good reasoning for that. because maybe they're just looking at the pro scene and not the regional. But you have to take the regional into consideration. Yeah, it might have been against bums, but it's things he looks for, man. And I'll tell you play by play how I think this fight's going to go. Adam's going to come out hot. He's going to throw his kicks. He's going to try and get him out of there early. He's not going to. Kinoshita's too tough, too big, too strong. He's not going to like what Kinoshita throws back at him. And I think he's going to panic into a takedown, and Kinoshita is going to snatch up the neck and catch the sub. That's my breakdown, man.
I love it. And, this is another guy like Tyra that the UFC is not ignorant to what they have. They have a guy who's dangerous. He's got a fun style. He's marketable. He's from a place in the world that they want to grow. They want to continue to do business. They might want to return with a show in the not too distant future. The UFC has really struggled to break into the Japanese MMA market over the course of their history. They've gone a number of times. They've never really brought a great show. They've never really had a great Japanese star to promote there. And I think that they're looking at these young fighters as investments in the future of their Japanese market. And so I don't think that they're trying to find fighters where, oh, this is the worst matchup for him in the division. No, they're looking like, who's a guy that Kinoshita could fight right now that would make him look good, that would build up his confidence, and that would continue his skill building and his development. I think Fugitt is going to provide that resistance in the early going. I think he's going to try, his best. He's going to bring that fighting spirit. I just think he's way outmatched here. I think there's a better fighter on the other side. I think there's a level gap here. I think that's reflected in the line, and I think it's going to be reflected in the fight. So I think Kinoshita inside the distance is fairly priced here, and I think that it's being priced that way because he got a late finish in some of his recent fights. I think that he could finish this fight, round 1 or round 2, because Fugitt comes out very hot. Sometimes that doesn't even last till the second round for people, and I think that in this kind of fight, I just favor Kinoshita basically wherever the fight goes. So give me Kinoshita. Give me Kinoshita inside the distance as the pick here. Next fight up, really weird one, man, because we've got Ho Choi, and Ho Choi is the longest, absence from the UFC octagon on this fight card. I think it's been a little over 3 years, 4 years since he's been or almost 4 years, I think, since he's been out of the octagon. So kind of curious to see what we get from Ho Choi in this fight back. Not a fight I really feel compelled to bet on because on the one hand, we've got a 65% favorite that hasn't been in the octagon in a while. When he was in the octagon, suffered a bunch of knockout losses in a row, couple career-altering losses, let's say, against Cub Swanson, stayed in the pocket there for a long time, eating damage. So good for him that he took some time away. He's had some canceled bouts along this time. That doesn't really speak to, confidence again in backing this fighter. He's had a hard time making it back to the cage. But then you think about the positioning. Then you think about the placement. This card was supposed to be in Korea, folks. If you guys aren't aware, the Korean Zombie ended up getting injured, falls off the fight card. They're like, why are we going to Korea then? Let's not go to Korea. Let's just do it at the Apex. It costs us less money. So that's why we're at the Apex for this fight card. Otherwise, it would have been in South Korea. Now we're dealing with a fighter in Ho Choi, who's the much more talented fighter, who's a much more, known quantity. The UFC likes this guy, cares about him, have him in the Hall of Fame, for Christ's sakes. That's why he's fighting Kyle Nelson, who otherwise probably would have been cut from the organization. And the organization probably called him and said, hey, Kyle, do you want to fight this fight in the Apex or get cut? And he was like, I will take this fight in the Apex. That is probably how the conversation went. And now he's here. So I think Kyle Nelson has recommitted himself. He's tried to do the right things. He's showing up in shape. I just don't think he's as good a fighter as Ho Choi. But can I get there from a betting perspective? No, I'm not laying it on the money line. If anything, I would just look for Ho Choi by knockout in round 1 or 2. That's probably how he would get this fight done. I don't think that it would be a very long fight. Kyle Nelson is a pretty tough guy, but he takes so much damage. Billy Q doesn't have a ton of power. That's why it took him till round 3. He was getting off anything he wanted and landing at will in that fight. I think Ho Choi has much more power. So if he's committed to just standing in the pocket and throwing his shots, I think that it's probably not going to end well for Kyle Nelson. What do you think about this one, Rich?
Yeah, the line was quite surprising on Choi. It was sitting around about minus 180 at one point. You'd expect him in this position to be minus 250, something like that. I went back and watched some fights. Jeremy Stevens, Charles Jourdain, and although he lost both of those fights by TKO, I didn't like what I was seeing. Like, he got hit by him and he kind of just shelled up. He wasn't rocked. He just didn't like getting hit. So that wasn't good to see. But yeah, to keep this short, I think Nelson is obviously round 1 KO or bust. You know, he's got his cardio problems, always has in every fight that he's been in. I watched his interview. He said he's going to come out fast and try and get him out early. So yeah, I think this is going to be a wild one for as long as it lasts. And I think someone's getting knocked out round 1. And yeah, I'd probably side with Choi, but I'm not going to risk it. You know, the time off and the things I saw against Stevens and Jourdain, I just really didn't like, man. So I'm staying away.
Couldn't agree more. No need to force it on a fight like this. This is a volatile fight. You know, Ho Choi's been out for 3 years. Nobody knows what to expect. And then on the other side, Kyle Nelson's just not very good. So not a fighter that you want to invest in long-term in order to make money. Next up, guys, Marcin Tybura taking on Blagoy Ivanov. And speaking of fighters that you wanted to invest in to make money, Marcin Tybura lately has just been a money factory. That Romanov fight was great betting opportunity. Did bet him there. Way more experienced UFC fighter. I thought he was a better wrestler on paper. You know, like obviously Romanov round 1, better, you know, dynamic wrestling. He'll throw people around, but just technique for technique. Tybura is a little bit more technical. He's a better grappler. And he was way better cardio shape for that fight. So in this fight, I think the same thing is going to be true. I think he's in better shape than Blagoy. I think that Blagoy looks slow and, you know, he lacks for dynamic finishing abilities. He's not a very dangerous fighter. Don't like betting on guys like that as a general rule. And then in this fight, you know, what is his real advantage? He's slower, in my opinion. He doesn't have as good a cardio. I don't think he's going to take down Marcin Tybura. I think if Marcin Tybura went for takedowns, there's a chance he could get them. So I don't know what he would do to win this fight, except for maybe getting lucky and knocking out Marcin. Marcin doesn't have a great chin. Also, it's just 2 greasy heavyweights. I mean, if they roll all over each other on the side of the octagon for 15 minutes, I guess I won't be too surprised. But I just think that every advantage for me would go towards Marcin Tybura. What do you think about this one, Rich?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I'm seeing a lot of love for Blagoy on Twitter. You know, I've heard people say that Marcin can't take him down and he has to take him down to win, which is just complete bullshit. And another thing I think people are overlooking, they're just tapology betting. You know, they're seeing that Blagoy doesn't get finished and, you know, he's resilient. But there's a diminishing point of return for every fighter, man. He's 36, and if you watch his last fights, although people haven't fully capitalized on it, yeah, fuck that up. But yeah, people who don't capitalize on it, and I think Tybura will. I think Tybura is going to knock him out. That's the short of it. Tybura is my biggest bet of the card. I bet him by KO. I bet the money line. He's going to smash Blagoy, and you know, people are going to see what's up. It's his cardio mainly. After round 1, go watch his last 2 fights, Blagoy. He's falling off a cliff, man. His cardio isn't what it used to be. De Lima, who's a round 1 fighter primarily, he took him down in round 3, man. That just tells you everything you need to know. And also, I wasn't going to mention it, but Liam doesn't endorse this opinion, by the way. This is my opinion. But Clint is on Blagoy. He's on Blagoy money line. He's on Blagoy KO. So that just tells you everything. Fade the virus. You know, listen to what I'm saying and bet Tybura, man.
Hey, I'll tell you what. It's heavyweight. Tybura's been knocked out a bunch of times. I do not blame my boy Clint for going to battle with his guy. I think he's been betting on Tybura a bunch of recent fights. I actually haven't listened to his show this week, but I got love for my man Clint. Everybody can approach it a little bit different, but that's why I bring on guests that have a different approach. If we all, you know, had the same opinion, wouldn't be much of a show anyway. So I think that next fight up is one of the interesting fights on the card, man. People seemed interested in this fight as well. I put out on Twitter a poll, you know, what fight do you want me to break down? I didn't want to do the main event just because I feel like that's a fight that's pretty easy to break down and talk about. But I put out, you know, just a list of fights, and way overwhelming votes went to Un Jung taking on Devin Clark here. And I think that there's a lot of people that are interested in Devin Clark as an underdog here, you know, in terms of the Twitter community. And I can't really blame them in a sense, but I also just, I can't get there, man. I watched Devin Clark and I don't think he's very good at fighting. His wins are not very good in the UFC. He's beaten a cast of characters that is not very impressive. Park is the younger, or excuse me, Un Jung is the younger fighter here. He's the taller fighter. He's got a longer reach. I think he has more knockout power of the two individuals. And a bunch of the fights early on for Jung in the UFC were against southpaws. I think that in this matchup, he's going to feel a little bit more comfortable. Also, in that Dustin Jacoby fight, he landed a couple good strikes. He landed a jump knee. He looked like he was overconfident. His defense is poor, right? And I talked about it in my video. So if you guys want to hear more of my opinion, you can go back and watch it. I gave a whole breakdown of the fight, but I'm curious to hear what you think about this fight because this is, where you start getting in that potential parlay buster range, the minus 225-ish type of favorite. But I also do feel like he's got some clear advantages, and I feel like Devin Clark is kind of fraudulent. So what do you think about this one, Rich?
Yeah, well, before I break it down, who do you think is going to be the, out of all the Asian fighters on the card, who's going to lose? Obviously, they've all got, favorable matchups, but who do you think out of everybody who may lose their fight?
Jun Yong Park. I think there's a pretty decent chance he gets knocked out, and he could be a parlay buster as well, similar range.
Exactly. I agree. That's why I'm on the Tululian side. I've seen people say that Clark, is a live dog. He could wrestle here, but I don't like it. Out of Clark's 7 losses, 6 are in the distance. I think rather than playing Jung by, money line minus 200, minus 220, whatever, you take it in the distance, just put a unit on it and see what happens. And there you go. In the chat, Clark is fragile. Exactly. He's had his jaw bust. He can wrestle a little bit, but Jung's a big fucker, man. What is he, 6'3"? Good luck taking him down. They were sending Clark
6'4", 78.5-inch reach. Huge.
Yeah, they were taking Clark to China or wherever for a reason, man. So yeah, Jung all the way for me.
Yeah, Jung is a South Korean fighter. I believe he's out of Korean Top Team. Card was going to be headlined by the Korean Zombie in Korea. Again, he was going to be, co-main event type of guy. This fight is just like, it should be called UFC Fight Night Mismatch. They just brought in Derrick Lewis and Sergei Spivak to headline a card that they otherwise have nothing to do with because they were stuck with that main event when Derrick Lewis fell out a little while back. How many weeks ago was that now? Probably 6 or 8 weeks. But either way, we're back. Derrick Lewis says he's not getting any respect. We are on to the main event here, guys. I just want to say real quick, thank you to everybody rocking with us live. We've got 50 people here rocking with us live. I know a lot of people are going to tune into this between now and fight time. So thank you all for being here. If you haven't already, drop a like on this video. Make sure you go subscribe to my man at Fight Night Bets. Go find his work at Fight Night Bets on Twitter. All his information's in the description box below. So make sure you show some love and support. He's here helping the people out for free, just trying to drop some knowledge and information. And there's not many people that have a long-term winning record in any sport. He has one of the premier long-term third-party track betting records in mixed martial arts. And I think that that's important to note. A lot of people can't say that, especially a lot of people that put out content on YouTube. So just wanted to thank you for your time as well, for being here. And guys, the last thing here as we kick it over to the main event, this show, all the stuff I do is brought to you by PrizePicks, easiest game in DFS. They have all the lines up for the UFC now. They have some of the better lines. You can get under 1.95 for the same price. And I'm talking about 1.95 rounds for the Tyra fight that you could for the under 1.5 rounds on a normal sports book. So only use PrizePicks when it's to your advantage. But if you decide to play, if you decide to sign up, they're going to deposit match you 100% up to $100 if you use my promo code Liam. It's just that simple. So thank you guys for the support. Easy way to support the show. And now we're talking about the main event, Derrick Lewis, Sergei Spivak. And this is a hard one to project out, man. I'll tell you what, one of the most profitable fades for me in the UFC, Derrick Lewis. I have faded this guy with great success many times. I had 5 units on Taito Avasa. I had 4-point-something units on Sergei Pavlovich. I was pretty sure these guys were going to win. Getting plus money against a fading heavyweight, had to take it. Now Derrick Lewis is back to being a massive underdog, and it's against a wrestling grappling archetype. Guys, if you look at the history of Derrick Lewis, why has he survived in this division so long? It's because normally when he fights wrestling grappling archetypes, they get knocked out brutally on the feet because heavyweights can't really grapple. They stink. They all are terrible. And I'm not saying this to be disrespectful. Most of them are plain bad. They can't do jiu-jitsu. They can't grapple. They can't wrestle. Daniel Cormier made a career of it. He's like, oh, these guys can't wrestle and grapple. I'll move up and submit these guys like they're nothing. That's what he was doing, and he did it to Derrick. Daniel Cormier is the exception. He's an Olympic-level wrestler. You see these guys who come in, the wrestling credentials, this and that, they can wrestle for 4.5 minutes, and they're gassed. So Derrick Lewis has made a career of just doing the fuck you get up, which is, and he just stands up to his feet and he's strong as shit. Guy's got prison workout strength. God bless him for it. On top of that, he's nasty. He's mean. He doesn't care. He's not a nice guy. If he knocks you out, some guys are like, oh, can I check on you? Are you okay? Derrick Lewis will knock you out 6 times and then laugh in your face and hump the floor and do whatever else and go, he's snoring. That's not my fault. Herb Dean's fault. He doesn't care. So I think that Sergei Spivak is a way less intimidating guy than Derrick Lewis. Like, if these guys were going to fight in a bar, I'd take Derrick Lewis 10 times out of 10. The fact that, Sergei Spivak could win this fight by sub, could just try and hold on to him, clinch up with him, maybe that's his path. I just can't get on board with the huge favorite distinction here. I really can't. I think that this is the kind of fight where Sergei Spivak getting face planted in the first round is like 50% of the outcomes. It's like, I can't unsee that. The guy has wins over Tai Tuivasa when Tai Tuivasa couldn't stop a takedown from me. Like, that was a horrific fight. It looked terrible for Tai. It didn't look great for Sergei. Sergei's had fights with guys like Tom Aspinall where he gets hit with one knee to the body and he's like, no, I'm out of here. See you later. So those are the kind of things that make me think, if a guy who throws a Marge Simpson bus driver uppercut lands on you, Sergei Spivak is taking the first road out of there. So I think this is a volatile fight. I understand why people want to fade Derrick Lewis. I don't think this is the time. Way bigger chalk price. And I think a lot of people are going to line up to do it. I think Sergei Spivak has a chance of being that parlay buster. What do you think, Rich?
First of all, I think Moy's audio gets the award for funniest comment of the night. Black History Month, Derrick Lewis by Farrakhanism. I like your passion breaking that down, man. Mine's a bit more simple. How can you not bet Derrick Lewis in this situation? He's all the way up to plus 200 now. I don't know what his KO is. I imagine it's around plus 240, something like that. His back's to the wall. He's lost his last 2-3 fights against good opposition. UFC have thrown him a bone here. I think he's taking it more serious than he has his last fights. It's in Vegas. If you look at his win rate, Vegas has been kind to him. It's when he fights in Texas or wherever else he tends to lose. Maybe it's the hometown pressure. Who knows? But yeah, this is a dog or pass situation, man. Yes, Spivak could win. Of course he could. It's heavyweight. But it's dog or pass, man. You play Derrick or you pass on the fight. That's my opinion. And I've got one unit on Derrick.
And now let's just game this out, folks. When you're thinking about the fact that Sergei Spivak is like plus 360 to win this fight by submission, in what fucking world? Like, Derrick Lewis doesn't really get submitted. Like, it's not easy to do. Nobody's really made it look easy to do. So I just don't buy that. I think that that's pretty silly. And I think that when we see Sergei Spivak, most of the time he's looking for, shitty ground and pound, which, by the way, I don't even know that that's going to get Derrick Lewis out of there unless he does it for the full 15. Like, I think it would be, Sergei Spivak by TKO 2 or 3 or 4. If he was to get the win here, I think more often than not, it's Derrick Lewis by knockout in round 1 or 2. And I think his anticipation of when guys just want to wrestle him, it makes it really easy for him to fight. He doesn't throw anything. So he forces you to take a stupid shot from way too far away, and they don't have speed or talent. So they run right into a massive punch. And I think that's exactly what's going to happen.
Bro, who even said that Spivak had good wrestling? Like, I don't deny he's a half decent grappler, but he was going life and death with Olenek, who at 50
the
years
ghost of Olenek.
So yeah,
he looked gassed in the third round in that fight too. So yeah. I don't get all the love for Sergei Spivak here. I do think that in terms of who projects, higher in the division long term, yeah, Sergei Spivak could put some stuff together and be a good fighter. But right now he's just a pretty average fighter going in there with a guy who's only lost to the elites. And Sergei Pavlovich, just because y'all didn't know who he was, doesn't mean he's not a good fighter. He was built back up slowly by the UFC. They tried to have him fight Alistair Overeem his first fight. They loved this guy, and they were like, oh, all right, too far. Let's bring it back a peg. And now I think that you're seeing the development of Sergei Pavlovich. That's not a bad loss. That the fact that was like not him flat out cold on the ground sleeping is really the impressive part to me, because Sergei was just landing anything he wanted in that fight. I think that Derrick bounces back here, and I think he does so in a big way. So Lewis by knockout in round 1. That's what I'm going to be looking at.
I see a lot of people putting a lot of stock into Derrick, losing some weight for this fight and getting into better fight shape as previously. It's like speed kills, man. You can look at it either way. How can you degrade him for that and say, It's heavyweight. You should be coming in at heavyweight, 265. Look at Almeida, who fought on the last card or so. He comes in at 265 at what, 220? There's something to be said, man. Heavyweights are usually slow and plodding. So Derrick losing this weight, it could be good for him, man. Speed kills.
Think about Rogerio de Lima and Ben Rothwell. Just absolutely lit him up because he was so much faster than him at that point in their careers. And that's the kind of thing that we're thinking about here. I don't think that the 10-year age gap makes that big a difference when one guy is known for keeping a fight relatively upright, getting back to his feet when he gets taken down, and knocking people into next Tuesday. So Derrick Lewis it is. It's been a great time. I've enjoyed this tremendously, but got to hop over. I'm doing Roto Grinders Premium Podcast next. So please, Rich, if you don't mind, tell the people where they can find you, my man.
Yeah, Fight Night Bets on YouTube and Twitter. Hit me up if you want my bets. You can check out my record. I'm going to start a Patreon. I don't know what I'm going to set it at, $12, something like that. So yeah, if you want my bets, man, hit me up on Twitter. And just some clarification. I seen Wiz Bets earlier saying, let's all be friends. No hate. I don't mean no hate to Clint. I just see a shit record and, I'll take every advantage I can get. So if he is on the opposite side of my bets, it just makes me all the more happier. It's the cherry on top. So no hate. He's a nice guy. I don't hate him. I just want an edge on my bets, and I like it when shit bettors are on the opposite side. So it's all good, man. All love.
And we all are, I root for Clint to do well. That's the truth. I root for him to do well. And if he is on sharp sides, then he's on sharp sides. And that means last week you were saying, you were on Moreno, you were on, I believe, Hill as well. But either way, you were saying I just got to go with my read because it's the right read. That's the thing. And I think that Rich is a very upfront guy. He's going to tell you everything that's on his mind. That's why he's so good at what he does. He is an individual. He doesn't go with the crowd on everything. That's easy to do. It's harder to say, I'm going to take a step back. So I love Clint and I respect his work, but guys, everybody's got to approach it different. So thank you very much, Rich, for coming on. It's been an absolute blast. I hope that you guys all learned something. I'll be back to talk to you guys again very soon. Until then, get subscribed, come back for more. God bless you all. Enjoy the fights. We'll do it all over again next week. Take care, everybody.